There's a headline I didn't expect to see. Gilgo Beach killings. Accused serial killer Rex Heuermann expected to plead guilty to homicides in a case that has haunted Long Island for more than a decade?
Please note that this content is for adults only. Viewer discretion advised. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe, like, and share.
Oh my goodness, this guy's going to plead guilty? Is it because he thinks he's going to get real butter in prison? If you don't know the story, this is Rex Heuermann, the suspected Long Island serial killer, charged with 7 murders at this point, right? And so I think he's suspected of so many more. But anyway, he wrote back to a serial killer who wrote to him. He's been sitting in jail since he was arrested in 2023. And the question that he had for the serial killer, the convicted one, Keith Jesperson, the happy face killer, was, do you get real butter in prison? Because he wasn't happy with the margarine in jail. So imagine if the answer was yes, you do. He's like, all right, that's it. I'm pleading guilty, man. I can't take it anymore. I need to get to the real butter. I don't know. Who knows? We will have to see if it even happens, okay? Because at this point, this is potentially happening. I'm going to read you this article, which is where the breaking news comes from. And then we're going to do a little recap just of the timeline and everything to try to, make sense of this case. Again, every time that I talk about this case, for every press conference we've watched, every document that we've deep dived, I've even interviewed District Attorney Ray Tierney. This is all in the playlist, right? We've looked at Rex Heuermann's life in every phase of his life. I mean, like 0 to 5 and 5 to 10, age 10 to 20 and 20 to 30, all of that, right? So that's all on the playlist for you. But every time that we go over this case, we have to recap because he's a suspected serial killer. So there's a lot of victims to look at and to figure out, wait, when did they go missing? When were their bodies found? What happened? And so on. Initially, he was charged with 3 murders. Then it became 4 for the Gilgo Four. And so it went, right? Okay, so let us get to this news now. My name is Grizzly. This is Grizzly True Crime. And this absolutely comes with a trigger warning. Family members of women whose remains were found near Gilgo Beach have been notified that alleged serial killer Rex A. Heuermann, his middle name is Andrew, is expected to plead guilty next month, relatives told Newsday. The Massapequa Park architect, accused of killing 7 women in a case that has haunted Long Island for more than a decade, is expected to change his plea during a scheduled appearance on April 8th. The family members said, so we definitely have to put that on our calendar. If you want the Grizzly True Crime calendar, it's available on Patreon. Details of the expected plea agreement have not been disclosed, and the deal could still fall through for a range of reasons, including second thoughts by Heuermann. I think that's a risk, yes, that could happen, and the prosecutor, or the judge could refuse to sign off. I feel like the highest risk there for this not happening is him changing his mind. I think the prosecutor would be okay with it, in my opinion. I don't know, I'm just guessing. And the judge, I think he'd sign off on it, But as for Rex Heuermann, just from everything we know, total control freak. Why are you going to relinquish control? Why are you going to plead guilty? Really, that's what I say. Is it because you want butter in prison? I don't know. Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney and Defense Attorney Michael J. Brown declined to comment on the anticipated guilty plea when contacted by Newsday this week. Heuermann, 62, who owned a Manhattan architectural consulting business until his arrest in July of 2023, has so far publicly denied any involvement in the killings. A trial has been expected for September, yes, of this year. They were anticipating that the trial was absolutely going ahead this year in September. So he faces life without parole. Well, I don't hope so, right? Being an alleged serial killer. Okay, if convicted of the top charge of first degree. Heuermann first became a suspect in the case, which involves at least 2 uncharged killings in March of 2022 after a state police investigator with the Gilgo Beach Homicide Task Force learned while reviewing the case file that alleged victim Lynn Costello was picked up by a man driving a green Chevrolet Avalanche. Police had already determined that the likely killer lived in Massapequa Park and worked in New York City based on phone calls placed to the victims from those locations. This is a quote. They say, Rex Heuermann is a demon that walks among us, a predator that ruined families. Former Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney K. Harrison said at a news conference that we watched together, announcing Heuermann's arrest. Sure, what a day that was. Do you remember that day? Oh my word. To build the case, the task force, which consists of members of the Suffolk Police Department, the New York State Police, the FBI, the Suffolk County Sheriff's Office, and the Suffolk District Attorney's Office, tracked burner phones, triangulated cell site data, used advanced DNA testing on strands of hair found on the victims' bodies, surveilled Heuermann, and picked up his DNA from a leftover pizza crust in a box that he discarded in Manhattan. Court papers show. We've read those court papers. Every line, all of it, right? So check it out. For each of the murders, this is a quote again, he got an individual burner phone, and he used that to communicate with the victims, and then shortly after the death of the victims, he'd get rid of the burner phone. Tierney said at the July 14th, 2023 news conference. Investigators also learned through his internet search history, and you know how we say Uncle Google's going to get you? No, he almost got Uncle Google. Those searches were scary. Do you remember them? If you don't, again, it's on the playlist. We went through all the documents. It's horrifying. I don't want to show you right now again, okay? Anyway, so they said they learned through his internet search history that Heuermann viewed torture, PORN, and that, I'm doing the censorship for YouTube, right? And maintained an active interest in the investigation, prosecutors revealed. Heuermann was arrested while walking away from his Manhattan office on July 13th of 2023 and arraigned on an initial indictment the following day, even as the investigation into additional killings continued, and I think will still continue, even if he pleads guilty to the charges that he now faces, right? I think he's always going to be suspected of way more. Okay, so police seized at the opportunity to make the arrest then because investigators were concerned that Heuermann continued to use the services of sex workers and might attack again, prosecutors have alleged. Heuermann was initially charged with first and second degree murder in the killings of Lynn Costello, Melissa Barthelemy, and Megan Waterman. In January of 2024, a special grand jury also indicted him on a second-degree murder charge in the death of Maureen Brainard-Barnes, effectively answering the question of who killed the Gilgo Four, the first set of remains found off Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach in December of 2010. The women whose skeletal remains were all discovered nude and bound were killed between 2007 and 2009, each at times when Heuermann stayed behind as his wife, Asa Elarab, and children left for vacations, prosecutors have said. Heuermann was indicted twice more in the over 2 years that he has spent in isolation at the Suffolk County Jail in Riverhead on 3 additional second-degree murder charges that widened both the geography and timeline of the alleged killings and exhibited a perceived shift in the way the accused killer carried out the crimes. Alleged victims Valerie Mack in 2000 and Jessica Taylor in 2003 were both mutilated, their severed bodies dumped near each, I hate it when they say that, disposed of near each other off Ocean Parkway and 40 miles east in the vast woodlands of Manaville. Sandra Costilla was also discovered with sharp force wounds to her body even further east of the Southampton town hamlet of Northsea in 1993, about 60 miles from Gilgo Beach. Their bodies were all found within days of their disappearances, which prosecutors have also said occurred while Heuermann was alone. So it's for those extra ones, those additional ones. They're talking about these right here, right? Which also occurred while his family was, out on holiday. And they said Heuermann was alone in the Massapequa Park home that he lived in with his family. The killings likely happened in the basement of the home, the prosecutors have said. All 7 women were said to have engaged in sex work, officials have said. Perhaps the strongest evidence linking Heuermann to the killings came in the form of nuclear and mitochondrial DNA analysis done by outside laboratories that linked him to 6 of the 7 killings by showing it was highly likely individual hairs belonged to him, his wife, their daughter, and in the case of Costilla, a woman he was previously married to, prosecutors have said. A search warrant at Heuermann's home also revealed that he once maintained an alleged planning document for how to best execute the killings and evade detection by law enforcement. Prosecutors asserted the file, which was deleted more than 2 decades ago, but recovered through technology utilized by federal investigators. Remember that? The planning document, we've gone over that as well. Oh my. And it showed that in the years between the Mack and Taylor killings, Heuermann sought out smaller women, scouted dump sites, maintained a list of supplies useful to a killer, and thought vigorously about ways to clean bodies and crime scenes. Rooms should be soundproof, and car tires should be changed after disposing of bodies under the plan. He wrote, "Remember, don't charge gas," it says he allegedly wrote in the file. But prosecutors still used financial documents as well as day planners that he kept to build the case against him, as his defense team filed motions to have the DNA and other evidence suppressed. On his April 8th appearance was scheduled for State Supreme Court Justice Timothy Mazzei to make a ruling on the latest defense motion. The guilty plea would come at a time when even more of the public has become aware of the high-profile case following the release of 2 multi-part streaming documentary series featuring the families of the victims and Heuermann's wife and daughter. Melissa Cann, the sister of Brainard-Barnes, spoke with the filmmakers behind a series that debuted on Netflix last March about how the families of the victims have been bonded by the way they lost their loved ones. She said, "I think us as families coming together is very important because you have people that are going through the same thing as you that understand," Cann said in the series. A separate documentary released on Hulu in July saw Heuermann's own family trying to reconcile how he might have committed such a crime. A slide near the end of the 3rd episode revealed that Victoria Heuermann, his daughter, now believes her father most likely committed the killings. She described her feelings toward him as love-hate since his arrest. "I love him as my dad," she tells the interviewer. "The hate is this other side of him that came out." If Heuermann does change his plea on April 8th, the judge Mazzei would then schedule a sentencing for a later date. So we're going to have to keep our eye on that. Okay, so let's quickly recap. Rex Heuermann, 62 years old, the suspected Long Island serial killer, was arrested on July 13th of 2023 in New York City. He's charged with the murders of Maureen Brainard-Barnes, Megan Waterman, Melissa Barthelemy, Amber Costello, Sandra Costilla, Jessica Taylor, and Valerie Mack, 7 women's murders. He's expected to plead guilty to all counts, and there's rumor that he might even plead guilty to more than that. We shall see. Imagine if other cases could be solved. Yeah, I think that's probably coming from him. Probably wishful thinking, but you never know. You never know, right? So, what started the investigation? Shannon Gilbert went missing on May 1st of 2010 from Oak Beach, Long Island, after visiting a first-time client, Joseph Brewer. The search for her began 1 month after her disappearance. Officer John Malia from Suffolk County PD and his cadaver dog, Blue, embarked on a search that would last almost 2 years. Blue alerted to the scent of human remains along Ocean Parkway, and then the Gilgo Four were discovered. Eventually, the remains of 10 people, including 1 man and a toddler, were found before Shannon was found. The police realized that they had stumbled upon the dumping grounds of an undetected serial killer. Oh no, we don't like the word dumping grounds. The disposal site, right? Searching for Shannon Gilbert evolved into searching for a serial killer who operated for more than 20 years in Long Island. And bizarrely, her case is not linked to Rex Heuermann. Police continue to say that she died by accident, as in she fell into the marsh and drowned and all of that, right? So anyway, that's a whole separate discussion. Now, how was he caught? These are pictures from the documents. Investigators were able to obtain DNA from a pizza crust that Heuermann threw out. That DNA was a close match for a hair found on one of the victim's body. Well, initially a close match, of course. Things evolved since then. We've read so many documents about all the DNA. And as I say, I interviewed District Attorney Ray Tierney, who also explained, this new DNA technology that they were going to use, that the defense was filing a lot of motions about, that they can't do that and all of that. And so they were going ahead with that for the trial as well. The state won their case in that regard. And so the defense has recently also said that it would be a violation of Rex Heuermann's privacy to take his pizza box, after he discards it. And then the response was, that's now public property because you discarded your pizza in the trash in a public setting. So of course they could take it, right? But yeah, the defense has been working very hard to try their level best to defend their client. The murders that Rex Heuermann is charged with. Okay, we're starting chronologically. So Sandra Costilla. So it's not in the order that he was charged with or the order that the bodies were found in. I mean, we've looked at it from different timeline angles as well, from who was found first but yet who disappeared first and all of that, right? So let's just go over this way today. So Sandra Costilla, she was 28 years old and she was murdered between November 19th and 20th of 1993. Her body was found November 20th of 1993. And she had been strangled, she was found partially clothed, and she was stabbed post-mortem. These are just the basics. We've gone over more details in the documents previously. Valerie Mack, 24 years old, and she was murdered between September and November of 2000. Her dismembered torso was found November 19th of 2000 in Manaville. Then her skull, foot, and hands were found April 4th of 2011 on Gilgo Beach. And she was Jane Doe number 6, who was identified in May of 2020 as Valerie Mack. Jessica Taylor, 20 years old. Last seen July 19th of 2003. She spoke to her mom on the phone on July 21st of 2003. And she was murdered between July 21st and 26th of 2003. Her torso was found July 26th of 2003, and her skull, hands, and forearm were found March 29th of 2011. Just look at the time span between those two dates. Rex Heuermann would have been 39 years old. Now, when I write that, I mean at the time that this victim was murdered, just so we could try to gather, well, where was he in his life, right? Maureen Brainard-Barnes was 25 years old, last seen July 9th of 2007. Her body was found on December 13th of 2010, and she had been asphyxiated. Rex Heuermann would have been 43 years old. Melissa Barthelemy, 24 years old, last seen July 10th of 2009. Her body was found December 11th of 2010, and she had been asphyxiated. Rex Heuermann would have been 45 years old. Megan Waterman, 22 years old, last seen June 6th of 2010. Her body was found December 13th of 2010. So you can see the Gilgo Four, right? All found around the same date there, December 2010. And she had been asphyxiated, and Rex Heuermann would have been 46 years old when the murder was committed. Lynn Costello, 27 years old, last seen September 2nd of 2010. Her body was found December 13th of 2010, and she had been asphyxiated, and Rex Heuermann would have been 47 years old. Karen Vergata has not been linked officially to Rex Heuermann. I just put this here as well because we'd previously looked at the maps and where bodies were found, and we are still looking at Asian Doe. We are looking at Karen Vergata's case, and we previously looked at Peaches and Baby Doe. I'm going to give you updates on that as well. Karen Vergata, she was last seen on February 14th of 1996, and 2 legs were wrapped in plastic, were found on Fire Island. And so she was called Fire Island Jane Doe for a long time, and then was recently identified. We watched that press conference as well. And her skull was found on April 11th of 2011, west of Tobay Beach in Nassau County. So not tied to Rex Heuermann at this stage. Then remember Peaches and Baby Doe? We all wondered if Rex Heuermann would he ever be linked to their murders? Well, at this stage, no. They've arrested another man, Andrew Dykes, 66, and he's been charged with Tanya's murder. So, Peaches and Baby Doe were identified as Tanya Denise Jackson and her daughter Tatiana Marie Dykes in April of 2025. June 28th of 1997, a local resident attending a fishing clinic discovered a container in a wooded area at Hempstead Lake State Park with a dismembered torso inside. Law enforcement officials would later identify the remains as belonging to Jane Doe number 3, or Peaches, because of a distinctive tattoo of a peach on the woman's chest. Nearly 14 years later, between April 4th and 11th of 2011, law enforcement recovered toddler remains along Ocean Parkway in Gilgo Beach, and additional remains determined to belong to Peaches on the westbound side of Ocean Parkway in the Zax Bay area. It was determined that the toddler child was the biological daughter of Peaches. And it was some of Peaches' remains found on one side, like to the west of Gilgo Beach, and then her daughter, Shame, found on the other side, and in between were all these other bodies found. But Andrew Dykes, 66, of Ruskin, Florida, he's been charged with Tanya's murder in December of 2025. And Andrew is Tatiana's biological father. So let's monitor that case as well. I did a whole separate video going over his arrest and the documents and everything there as well. So do check that out if you haven't seen that yet, if you want more updates on that. And then we've also got Asian Doe, who was also found on Gilgo Beach. And so Asian Doe has not been identified. The victim is believed to be a biological male of Southern Chinese descent, likely of Han Chinese ancestry, aged between 17 and 23 at the time of death, with a height ranging from 5 feet 3 inches to 5 feet 9 inches. And his body was discovered on April 4th of 2011 on Gilgo Beach. The individual was found wearing women's clothing, including a chrysanthemum brand blue-ribbed short-sleeve shirt with a crew neck, a Raffaella brand shirt, Bill Blass brand pants, and a bra, leading authorities to suggest the possibility that they identified as a woman or were known as such by others. Their cause of death was determined to be homicide by blunt force trauma, with the remains estimated to have been at the site for at least 5 years prior to the discovery, placing the death between 2001 and 2006. Investigators believe that the victim may have been a sex worker and likely spent time in New York City before their disappearance. Recent efforts to identify Asian Doe included the release of updated forensic sketches on September 16th of 2024. Shame, that feels like yesterday, and it's been so long already since these sketches were released. Please continue to share them as well. And so this was released by Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, depicting the victim with both long and short hair to account for potential gender expression. Authorities are offering a $2,500 reward through the Suffolk County Crime Stoppers. There's the tip line as well for tips leading to the victim's identity. If Rex Heuermann is involved in the murder of Asian Doe, my wish would be that he would plead guilty to that and say who this person was, but there's no link to him yet. So you could see we went over the cases that he's allegedly going to plead guilty to, the 7 murders, and now we've also just touched on some of the others like Asian Doe, Karen Vergata, and then Peaches and Baby Doe, right? Okay, and there's more as well, because District Attorney Ray Tierney has been sharing specific cases that he's been highlighting from his cold case unit on his Facebook page, and it's also been shared in the news, and I've also shared them before. So yeah, I wonder how many cases they'll be able to solve eventually, right, that may be linked to Rex Heuermann. So that is the update we have for now. So I'm going to keep you posted. Before we know it, it's going to be April 8th, right, of 2026. It's just around the corner. And let's see if he actually does plead guilty on that day. And if so, let's see when the sentencing date will be. Can you imagine the victim impact statements? Oh my goodness. So yes, we'll just have to wait for that I will keep you posted. Please check out the playlist if you want to know more about each of these cases I spoke about today. There's probably more as well that we've looked at on the map. Thank you so much to Catch Lisk Raul for his fantastic maps and, you know, all the updates that he shares in this case. He's an expert at this case, so do check him out as well. He's on X, and you can find him as Catch Lisk on social media platforms. All right, so I'll keep you posted. Stay safe in the meantime, and I'll see you in the next one. I'm glad that if he does plead guilty, that there will be justice served in that way, that the families will not have to go through just seeing horrific evidence, right? I'm sure what they've heard already, and just the thought of a serial killer killing your loved one is just unbearable, right? Okay, so I'll see you again soon. In the meantime, stay safe.